That's it. You've been using the $500 I sent for living expenses for fun, haven't you? Jason shouted loudly as he returned home. Could he be lying even more, not satisfied with just exploiting me? As I heard his voice, anger also welled up in my heart. Jason was a problem. He surely had no intention of listening to me. My love for Jason, who ignored my words and said things as he pleased, cooled rapidly. Do you have any intention of listening to me? I don't want to hear your excuses. Either return the money you spent immediately or divorce. What? Then it's divorce. I answered with a smile. Right after that, the front door opened. It seemed my son Kevin had come home. It's wrong to blame Mom. What? Are you defending this woman? She has. That's exactly why you both lost my trust. Seeing the person who appeared behind Kevin, we were surprised. Thanks to his support, I was able to divorce Jason. And by stopping the remittances, they will be put in a difficult situation. I, Tracy Manning, 37 years old, am a normal part-time office worker and a mother with a son, Kevin, who is in the midst of his rebellious phase. Kevin, ever since he was young, liked his studies and would voluntarily do his homework and prepare for lessons without my prompting. As he entered his rebellious phase, he gradually began to ignore me. However, he never used harsh words or violence. When he became a high school student, I felt this was normal. More difficult than my son were my husband Jason and my mother-in-law Diane. I met Jason in college, and we started dating due to his proactive approach. After graduating, Kevin was born and we got married. How rude to have a shotgun wedding, my mother-in-law criticized. She loved Jason very much and probably thought I took him away. I endured her mistreatment. Sometimes it even endangered my pregnancy. At such times, my father-in-law Michael would save us, saying, "What are you doing?" My father-in-law is strict but kind-hearted, a benefactor who has supported us many times. I keep in touch with my father-in-law, but I keep my distance from my mother-in-law. Honestly, I don't want to get involved with her. Then one day, I got an unpleasant call from my mother-in-law. Hey, could you increase the remittance a bit? Actually, we were financially supporting her. Once, Jason suggested we live together. However, citing unresolved issues from the past mistreatment and Kevin's examination period, I refused. Then, Jason and his mother strongly criticized me. Not wanting to live together is inappropriate for a wife. My mother-in-law said, always dwelling on the past. Jason also said, wait, does living together mean I have to change my desired school? Kevin changed the situation with those words. Kevin, as the heir, was pampered by my mother-in-law. If I don't go to that school, my future will be jeopardized. Do you intend to hinder my dreams? If so, I'll never forgive you. Because of Kevin's words, my mother-in-law had nothing to say. Jason also silently looked at his mother. It was also helpful that my father-in-law was on our side. If you don't value your family, you might lose your job, he warned Jason. My father-in-law runs a company where I work part-time. Jason is the nominal successor, but his lack of work skills is well known. Even I, a part-timer, hear about Jason's incompetence. It's that famous. I think his current position is due to my father-in-law's mercy. Understanding this, Jason stopped mentioning living together. Given this background, we decided to provide financial support instead of living together. I don't feel the need to provide support, but please let me at least do this for my parents, begged Jason, so I accepted it. Jason is lazy, so in reality, I am the one sending the $500 he gave me directly to my mother-in-law. I think there's no need for financial support with your husband's income, but it's for my husband. Just send it quickly without complaints. My mother-in-law insisted over the phone. Arguing would only make my mother-in-law angrier. Until now, Kevin and my father-in-law have been supportive. But now Kevin is in adolescence, and my father-in-law is busy with an important project. It's hard to ask for help. Despite this, my mother-in-law's persistent demands for more money continued, so I decided to add another $300 from my part-time income. Just $300? Well, okay. I've increased the amount, so please don't make unnecessary contact anymore. I firmly warned my cheerful mother-in-law. Keeping distance from my mother-in-law was best, but I couldn't forget my father-in-law's kindness. I plan to endure until Kevin becomes independent. I'm back. Welcome back. After that, I plan to talk to Jason, who had just returned home, about the increased financial support. But Jason avoided even looking at me. Irritated by him, I still tried to have an important conversation. I want to talk a little. Enough, I'm tired. I'm going to take a bath, he said and headed straight to the bath. Picking up the socks and tie Jason left strewn about, I sighed. What's wrong? A voice came from behind, and I turned around in surprise to see Kevin, also looking surprised. That startled me. Kevin. It's been a while since he spoke to me, so I was surprised. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to startle you. It's okay. Did something happen? We talked for the first time in a long time. I was so happy, I ended up telling him everything. Being ignored by your own husband is indeed painful. Meanwhile, Kevin listened to my story, seemingly deep in thought. Maybe grandma. Hey, I'm done with the bath. Time for dinner. While Kevin was about to say something, Jason returned to the living room. So, Kevin stopped speaking and went back to his room. Feeling like I missed a precious moment with my child, I served dinner to Jason. Hey, I have something I want to talk about. Even while eating. What? Fish? Not meat. The moment I tried to start a conversation, Jason complained about the meal. You said you wanted fish today, but more importantly, that was this morning, right? Now I feel like eating meat. A wife should sense these things. I don't have ESP. You know, I go shopping after work, right? You should tell me before then. Shut up. You're a failure as a wife. Why did I have to be criticized like this? When I argued back, Jason became more dissatisfied, leading to a marital argument, and I couldn't bring up the topic of financial support. At that time, I didn't realize that Kevin was recording us with his smartphone. Sigh, father-in-law is really a good person. I muttered to myself alone in the living room. To be honest, I had to express it out loud to cope with the stress. My mother-in-law sighed. A younger Jason used to consider my health and help with housework. That's why I decided to marry him. But after Kevin was born, everything changed. While I struggled with Kevin's upbringing, he didn't support me at all, continuously criticizing. Mom would do it this way, Mom would be perfect. Thoughts of divorce came and went in my mind. I pondered over the future alone after such events. Around the time Kevin started his summer vacation. During that period, Jason completely ignored me. It was the same behavior as Kevin during his rebellious phase. Is he really a mature adult? There's something important. Come to our parents' house. One day, our family was called to my in-laws' house. It was sudden, and I had work, and Kevin had other plans, so I sent Jason alone. Jason looked a bit displeased, but took a leave and went by himself. Kevin was also getting ready to leave. Kevin, where are you going? Friends. Yeah, that's right. Okay, take care. Don't be too late. So, Kevin and I left the house separately. While at work, I heard that Jason's absence increased work efficiency, and I unconsciously smiled. When I returned home, no one had come back yet, and I started preparing dinner, wondering if I would be criticized that day. Suddenly, hey, Tracy, Jason yelled as he entered through the front door. What happened, Jason? You seem so upset. You've been deceiving me. With doubtful eyes, Jason shouted at me. What? Not understanding his words, I tilted my head and Jason glared at me with anger. Confused, I understood the situation from Jason's next words. We're getting a divorce. You've been playing with the $500 I gave you for living expenses. As soon as he came home, Jason began his angry tirade. Listening to Jason, anger also welled up in my heart. Jason was out of line. Seeing his behavior, he clearly had no intention of listening to me. Jason's attitude of unilaterally throwing words without listening to me rapidly cooled my affection for him. Don't you intend to listen to me? I don't want to hear your excuses. Either return the money you spent immediately or divorce. What? Then divorce it is. I spoke with a gentle smile, and then the front door opened. It seemed Kevin had come home. It's wrong to blame Mom. What? You're defending this woman? She has to. That's exactly why you have lost our trust. We were surprised by the person who appeared behind Kevin. Father, Dad, why are you here with Kevin? There stood my father-in-law, filled with indignation. What are you doing? Explain quickly. When my father-in-law asked in a stern tone, Jason immediately stumbled over his words. My father-in-law gazed at him sternly while Kevin took out his smartphone. I recorded all of Dad's behavior towards Mom, including our recent conversation. This will show everyone that Dad is wrong. What? When Kevin said that, Jason looked utterly shocked. I won't allow you to make Mom the villain, and if you try to hurt her, I'm prepared to take you down, Dad. Kevin is athletic and well-built, while Jason has recently started to develop a belly, a typical middle-aged man. The difference in strength was clear. You're defying your father? What kind of father are you talking about? A father who follows grandmother's every word and ignores Mom's opinions? Even when I ignored her, Mom was always sincere towards me. But what are you doing as a father? Is making Mom suffer your job as a father? Jason remained silent at Kevin's calm words. Children grow up before you know it. Despite this situation, I was sincerely happy that Kevin was protecting me. Jason, remember what I said earlier about what happens to a man who doesn't value his family? My father-in-law said this, and Jason's face turned pale. A natural reaction. It's as if he's saying he's about to fire him. Mom, here. This is a divorce form? What I was handed was a divorce form. Why did Kevin have this? I never expected such preparations. You don't have to worry about me. Encouraged by Kevin's words, I quickly filled in my part and handed it to Jason. Without hesitation, Jason signed the divorce form and then looked at me, surprised. What? Are you sure? Won't you be in trouble if we get divorced? I'll manage. It's easier than living with you. And no more troubles with your mother. But you have no choice but to sign the divorce form. Sign it now. Jason hesitated slightly, but under my father-in-law's stern gaze, he signed the divorce documents, looking dejected. Kevin, pack up. We're going to my parents' house. Got it. After that, we quickly packed our things and headed to my parents' house, sent off by my father-in-law. Jason, who tried to follow us, was glared at by Kevin and my father-in-law, stopping him in his tracks. We decided to stop by the city hall on the way to submit the divorce form. I'm truly glad Kevin and my father-in-law came back together. They made it possible for me to divorce Jason smoothly. What about the financial support? Of course, I'm stopping it. Stopping the financial support would definitely change their situation. Upon arriving at my parents' house, they welcomed us warmly, despite the sudden visit. After ensuring we were okay, my father-in-law went home. Hey Kevin, why were you with grandfather? Choosing a calm moment, I asked Kevin. Actually, I had a meeting planned with Grandpa today. It turned out his plan for the day was to talk with my father-in-law. Kevin had told my father-in-law about the financial support and Jason's daily behavior after hearing about it from me. They had made plans to meet to discuss future strategies. It turned out that my father-in-law didn't know the details of the financial support. Come to think of it, my father-in-law was absent when the financial support was decided. The topic of financial support came up after my father-in-law had left the room. The subsequent arrangements were made over the phone with my mother-in-law. I would tell my husband, and my husband understands, she said, but maybe that was a mistake. And when Kevin told my father-in-law about the situation, he seemed to be trembling with anger. Diane should have sufficient funds from me. What is she spending the money on? As a result, my father-in-law apparently conducted an investigation into my mother-in-law's activities. What became clear was my mother-in-law's wasteful spending habits. She had been using the financial support we sent for extensive shopping. During my mother-in-law's absence, a search of the storage revealed countless branded items and luxury jewelry. Moreover, It seemed she had been giving lavish gifts to attractive young men in the neighborhood. The men showed no interest in my mother-in-law, and I wouldn't seriously date a man much older than me either. The rejected gifts were left unopened in the storage because she couldn't deal with them, and my father-in-law disposed of them. Grandpa is divorcing Grandma. He was furious about her irresponsibility. I can imagine. My father-in-law decided to divorce my mother-in-law, and after seeing Jason's actions on Kevin's phone, he was further enraged. He returned with Kevin to encourage me to divorce Jason too, after deciding to get divorced himself. They encountered the scene of me being criticized and immediately urged for the divorce papers to be signed after hearing me declare I wanted a divorce. That's why everything was so prepared. Exactly. This is from Grandpa. Kevin handed me a brochure about a property. The property was of moderate size, located midway between the school and my workplace. It seemed a bit far from my in-laws' house. What does this mean? I asked. Grandpa wants to offer us this house as an apology for the recent situation, Kevin explained. I was wide-eyed with surprise. While I would have to drive from my parents' house, I could commute using regular routes from this new house. Grandpa said he doesn't want us to hesitate. It seems he'd be happier if we accepted the house. I see. I need to thank him later. I was impressed by such generosity, typical of a CEO. I gratefully accepted the house offered by my father-in-law. Eventually, Jason lost his job, not only because of this incident but also because he exposed his incompetence by leveraging his position as the CEO's son and caused various problems. He was pushing off the little work he was assigned, coercing young female employees into relationships, and harassing male employees. During the discussion of these issues, testimonies piled up, resulting in Jason's immediate dismissal. My mother-in-law, divorced by my father-in-law and kicked out of the house, apparently ended up at Jason's place. After the settlement of asset division and child support, Jason's savings were almost depleted, and he was hit with the misfortune of losing his job. Recently, I saw Dad working at a classmate's part-time job, being scolded. Really? Did that classmate say anything special? I asked. Yeah. He said, a man like your dad came in. I told him not to hesitate to be strict if he's not useful. Kevin replied. I see, that's how it is. Being continuously scolded by his son's classmate. What a pitiful situation. He was famous for his incompetence, and as he aged, his prospects for reemployment became even more difficult. On top of that, with my mother-in-law's unreformed spending habits, he is now struggling with debt. I heard from locals that fighting can be heard from their house daily, and recently the police were called due to the disturbance. That incident must have been a significant humiliation for him. Perhaps soon, he might have to leave that house, facing the possibility of being evicted due to mortgage delinquency. On one hand, I made progress in my career. My promotion to a full-time position meant more time and responsibility, but it also came with a corresponding increase in income. Life became a bit more comfortable compared to before, and I no longer had to worry about the monthly financial support. After hearing about Jason's situation, Kevin started showing interest in part-time work. Now, he buys what he wants with his own earnings, freeing us a bit from the strict budget we used to have. His growth and independence are a great relief to me. Unlike my mother-in-law, who had a habit of wasteful spending, we continue to live frugally, eliminating worries about the future. Our family is striving for a stable financial life. My relationship with my father-in-law remains good, and we see each other regularly. One day, my father-in-law made an unexpected proposal to Kevin. If you haven't decided on your future plans yet, how about considering taking over my business after graduation? I'd like you to play a key role in our company, he said. It seems my father-in-law has always considered Kevin as a successor to the company. Maybe employing Jason was part of this plan to spark Kevin's interest. There's no need to rush. If you don't find another dream by the time you graduate from college, I'd like you to consider our business as an option, my father-in-law said, and Kevin took his words seriously. Kevin, you can choose your own path. Don't worry about the favor. I'll solve it through my work, I told him. Thanks, Mom. Actually, I'm still undecided about my future, Kevin replied. He's aiming for a top university's economics department, but his future is still unclear. Then, one day, I received a call from Jason. He was struggling with the mortgage payments and ended up selling the house. I was just astonished by Jason, who left my mother-in-law behind. I understood that Jason was walking the path he chose, but I was still disappointed by his actions. You won't have any more trouble with my mom. Let's start over, Tracy. Kevin needs a real father, Jason said, to which I sharply reacted. What do you have left now? I asked, and he just looked puzzled. Through this exchange, I reconsidered my and my son's future. Our lives aren't dictated by someone else's choices. No matter what path Kevin chooses, I plan to support him fully. While my father-in-law's offer is appreciated, I want Kevin to choose his future on his own terms. I hope his university studies will bring new possibilities to his life and shape his dreams and aspirations. We will continue to move forward step by step, overcoming difficulties. Along with my son's growth, I may have also started a new journey. You have no job, no property, no home. Kevin and I have no feelings left for you. You even abandoned your mother, the only one you had left. What do you have now? Jason was silent to my question. I was honestly disappointed with him for choosing his mother over me and then ultimately abandoning her. The Jason I once loved seems to no longer exist. But if I return to you, Tracy, you no longer have a place with us. I don't want you to contact us ever again. I hung up the phone and set it to block his calls. Later, Jason went to my parents' house, but my father especially had harsh words for him, and my father-in-law took him away. He was then assigned to a construction site far away. Surrounded by burly men at work, it seems unlikely he'll interfere with us again. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, abandoned by Jason, lost her place and was rumored to be seen under a bridge. But that is no longer my concern. I'll be late coming home today because of my part-time job. Okay, thanks for letting me know. That's my line. Thank you, really. Since then, Kevin has emerged from his rebellious phase and engages in proper conversations with me. Through recent events, I've come to understand Kevin's feelings better. To respond to those feelings, I've been expressing my gratitude and apologies directly. Thanks to his response, our parent-child relationship has become closer. Jason's departure, ironically, made us closer as a family. I spent the day with Kevin, thankful for this, and smiling. My relationship with my father-in-law remains unchanged. I may want him as a successor, but I just want to see my dear daughter and grandson, he says, caring for us. My father-in-law was delighted when we recently went on a trip with my parents. I hope to maintain this good relationship with him. Years after the divorce, letters from Jason asking for reconciliation kept coming through my parents. I've been tearing them up without reading. Another letter from him? Looks like it. He still hasn't given up. He should realize that giving up is the real path to happiness. He probably wants to regain something since he has nothing left. Let's hurry and have dinner. Today, Kevin, who has just graduated from college, is going to his first day of work as a successor in the company. He earned the employees' trust during his internship while he was a student. The office staff even mentioned how he's seen as a promising new employee. I'm proud of my son. Actually, I wanted to give this to you, Mom. What is it? He handed me a beautiful box with an elegant pen inside. I bought this with the money I've been saving. I could work hard because of you. I was moved to tears in the morning. I want to continue living peacefully and closely as a family. And I want to be there for Kevin so he can always smile. I'll be careful not to be overbearing like someone we used to know. Pay back the full amount, got it? I guess that means you'll end up on welfare soon. Haha. I'm planning to demand damages too. Be mentally prepared, haha. I clenched my fist firmly. However, I suppressed my anger and answered with a smile. Understood. As you say, settling up debts is important, right? Make sure to check the exact amount I spent then, okay? Saying that, I gave my address and hurried home. Brad might have thought I was running away, but I wasn't. The next time that Brad contacts me, I intend to put an end to everything. I was determined. That time came sooner than I thought. It was 3 days after I had met Brad again. He called me repeatedly, but when I answered, Brad just repeated the same things over and over. I felt that we had to meet in person to resolve this. So we met again. That's when Brad said, How are you living in such a luxurious house? It seemed that his agitation over the phone was because of my house. Brad was completely confused upon seeing the magnificent mansion I lived in. I am Allison Bradley. I am now 40 years old, a housewife dedicated to taking care of my family. I met Brad, my husband, 6 years ago. It was through an introduction by the company president of the place that I used to work at. That president loved fishing. During one fishing trip, he had a chance to talk to Brad, who had come with a friend by coincidence. Apparently, Brad wasn't so interested in fishing and seemed to be just killing time, instead engaging in conversation with the company president, who had come alone. When the president found out he was single, he thought of introducing him to me. Having lost my parents at a young age, I had been all alone. The president, who cared about me, thought that Brad and I, being of the same age, could start a family, and so he introduced us. I was grateful for the president's kindness. When I met Brad, he seemed to really like me for some reason. From there, we started dating and eventually got married. Afterwards, I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. Brad was truly a warm-hearted person. His parents were wonderful, too, treating me like their own daughter. Having lost my own parents, they were like real parents to me. Brad's family home was a duplex, built when his parents got married. After the death of Brad's paternal grandparents, one side of the house became vacant, so we decided to live there. Though we lived separately, we often saw his parents and had a good relationship with them. However, there was one thing about Brad and his parents' relationship that bothered me. Actually, Brad's father had become wheelchair-bound due to an illness a few years ago, but Brad seemed to show little concern for him. For example, on the day we first met, when we went to the restaurant we had reserved, we saw a man in a wheelchair having trouble getting over a step. I reached out to help him over the step. I later learned that this man was Brad's father. At that time, I asked Brad to watch his father while his mother went to the restroom. Despite this, Brad left his father alone and went to the restroom himself. Brad, I asked you to stay with Dad. His mother scolded, but Brad showed no remorse. Despite feeling a bit uneasy about Brad, I forgot those feelings when he complimented me. You are truly a wonderful woman, helping my dad, a stranger to you. Looking back, there were often such incidents. Originally, I hadn't been told about Brad's father being in a wheelchair, and I questioned the choice of such an inconvenient restaurant. Recently, when the four of us were dining, he suggested, "Why don't we try climbing a mountain?" Brad seemed to have no consideration for his father. In response, I told him, "Brad, your father has a disability? What are you thinking to suggest climbing a mountain?" But he just laughed. Of course, Dad can't go. Haha, I know that. He doesn't have to come. Haha. Even if he doesn't go, it's hard for him to be alone at home. Don't you think it's cruel to propose a trip he can't join? All right then, Allison, you can stay home and keep him company. I was disappointed with his words. Nothing I said seemed to get through to Brad. Every time Brad said something, I continued to feel sorry for his father. But the story doesn't end there. One day, when I had almost forgotten about such incidents, Brad suggested going on a trip with his mother, just the two of them. He said, "Allison can take care of Dad, so no worries," actually getting ready to leave with his mother. His mother, thinking I had agreed, smiled happily and said, "Allison, contact me if there's any problems." Thank you for this time with Brad. Unable to argue, I just watched them leave in silence. Afterwards, I apologized to Brad's father for his selfish actions. I'm grateful for your constant care. It's my fault for being sick. Allison, don't worry about it. Brad's father kindly smiled. His smile was comforting, but I was not satisfied and kept waiting for Brad to come home. Brad continued to plan various trips, including lunches, dinners, day trips, and overnight stays, often going out with just his mother. "But I feel bad for Allison," his mother said, to which Brad kindly replied, "You usually take care of things, Mom, so it's okay for you to take a break once in a while." Allison also said she agrees. I don't remember saying that, but I couldn't deny it. Each time they went out, I stayed home with Brad's father and took care of him. I felt sorry for Brad's father, and it seemed he felt sorry for me too. 2 years later, Brad's father passed away. At the funeral, I heard Brad's unbelievable words. "Finally free, haha. A wheelchair-bound old man is just a burden. Well, at least we had someone to take that burden and make it easier for Mom and me. So I guess we should be grateful, haha," he said. Trembling with anger, I thought, he called his kind father just a burden, and the person taking care of that burden was me? At that moment, Brad's true feelings towards me became clear. I bet he enjoyed those trips with his beloved mother. Meanwhile, he completely ignored me and his father. Regarding having children, he always said to me, "Let's enjoy some more time together, just the two of us." But we hardly ever spent time alone. Maybe it was an excuse, fearing that I couldn't take care of his father if I got pregnant or gave birth. I cried quietly in frustration, feeling pathetic, relieved that everyone left me alone at the funeral. Of course, I don't think his mother had such intentions. Her sad face at Brad's father's funeral didn't seem like an act. I understood why she was happy to be invited on trips with Brad, and she always brought me souvenirs. Perhaps his mother should reconsider her actions, but she seemed regretful after Brad's father's death. However, if Brad had been more thoughtful, he wouldn't have let his mother feel such regret. The more I thought that he was the cause of everything, the more unforgivable he became. Since then, we have become a couple in name only. In front of his mother, we converse as normal, so as to not cause worry, but alone, we were like strangers. Over time, I didn't care whether Brad was home or not. He was probably out with his mother, and now that Brad's father was gone, I couldn't say anything. However, one day, Brad was absent, but his mother was at home. "Oh, aren't you with Brad today?" I asked. She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "Since Dad passed away, we haven't gone out together. We decided on that." "What?" I was surprised. I told him to cherish the time with you more. Brad agreed and said he would take proper care of his wife. She continued. I couldn't hide my shock. He had said that just to please his mother, without even a hint of affection. I began to speak quietly. "I'm sorry, but I'll be honest. There's no longer any love between us. Brad cherishing me is close to impossible. There's no way that he would do such a thing. That's..." His mother was clearly shocked. I couldn't endure it anymore. Pretending to be happy was too painful. But then, where is Brad going? He's hardly at home every day and night. True. I thought he was with you. We looked at each other, realizing our collective misunderstanding, wondering who Brad was with and where. That night, when Brad came home late, I asked him directly, "You're late. Where have you been?" I asked, and Brad stopped, surprised. He hadn't expected me to speak to him. "I was having dinner with Mom." Brad replied indifferently. It was clearly a lie. If it were with his mother, I wouldn't have said anything. He must have known that, hence his words. But this time, I couldn't stay silent. "Your mother was at home. Which mother were you dining with? Why are you being so sarcastic?" "Sarcastic? You're the one telling lies," I countered Brad. He sighed heavily and responded, "Does it matter where I was? Let me have some freedom on my days off. It's not just the weekends. You come home late even on work days, and all you do on your days off is play. You've been pushing the caregiving on me since your father was alive." I raised my voice, unable to hide my anger. Brad couldn't argue because what I said was true. He yelled back, perhaps in desperation. "Shut up. I keep you here because Mom likes you. If you're just going to complain, then leave. That's going too far." I struggled to contain my anger, but Brad continued smigly. "You'd be in trouble, right? An orphan and a housewife with nowhere to go? What would you do if I abandoned you? But since you've defied me, I don't need to take care of you anymore. His relentless insults almost broke me. I didn't regret standing up to Brad. I didn't expect understanding, but there was no reason for him to treat me that way either. Actually, if you leave now, it would be perfect timing. There's a woman who wants to marry me. I'll be just fine without a woman like you. What, are you cheating on me? I blurted out in surprise. Cheating? Don't make me laugh. But you just said there's a woman who wants to marry you. That's right. I'm serious about her. It's a good opportunity for you to leave so I can marry her. Just like that, we headed towards divorce. Brad's mother kept crying and apologizing, and her sorrow almost made me cry. From 35 to 40, I wasted my precious years. But I decided to start a new life. A year after the divorce, I had settled into my new life. The president of my former company rehired me, and work was going well. One day, after work, I stopped at a supermarket and reached for a half-price side dish, feeling tired. That's when I saw my favorite cheesecake in the discount section and heard a familiar voice. "What are you doing here, huh?" I looked up. Brad was standing there, picking a half-price side dish all alone, huh? That's none of your business. I grabbed the cheesecake and was about to leave when Brad continued. "Wait, you used Dad's savings, didn't you?" Brad asked. "I didn't use your father's savings," I answered. "Don't lie. You used it for things like adult diapers while taking care of him. Didn't you?" I was surprised by Brad's words. That I was using the money in that way was obvious, and I had permission from his parents for those expenses. They had asked me to buy them, so Brad had no right to complain. But that money was. I started to object when Brad, with a smug smile, said, "Pay back the full amount of what you used. Doing so means you'll end up on welfare, I imagine. And be prepared for the damages I'm going to demand." I answered calmly, holding back my anger. "Understood. Yes, we should settle things properly. Make sure to check the exact amount I spent then, okay? Don't act so high and mighty." Brad laughed, but I didn't rise to his provocation. I took out a note from my bag and wrote down my address. "This is where I live now. I think we need to talk, so contact me later." I handed him the address and hurried home. Brad might have thought I was running away, but that wasn't the case. I was determined to end everything the next time Brad contacted me. That decision came just 3 days after our reunion. I was at work. I noticed that I had received numerous calls from Brad. With so many calls, I wondered if something had happened. As I thought this, another call came in. I answered quickly, worried that something might have happened to my mother-in-law. "Hello, what's happened?" I asked, and Brad screamed from the other end of the phone. "What's going on? What's wrong?" I replied, and Brad said, "I'm in front of your house right now. What's all this about?" I couldn't understand what he was talking about. Brad seemed half-crazed, muttering something and seemingly having lost his sense of reason. Feeling uneasy about him, I asked again calmly, "You're in front of my house." "Sorry, I'm still at work. Is this about our discussion?" When I said such, he shouted back, "I don't care about the discussion. I'm asking what's going on." The conversation was getting nowhere. I sighed deeply. At least it seemed that nothing had happened to my mother-in-law. "We can't resolve this over the phone. Let's meet up. I'll be home in 3 hours," I said, checking my watch, and hung up. I ignored the continuing calls from Brad. After work, I hurried home and saw Brad as soon as I arrived. "Have you been here the whole time?" I couldn't help but ask him, and Brad approached me with an angry face. "What is this all about?" He yelled. "What are you talking about? Be specific," I responded. Brad pointed to my mansion. "Why are you living in such a luxurious house?" His voice was excited and forceful. I stepped back in surprise. "I can't believe it. You used my dad's inheritance? What are you talking about? That's not it at all." Brad advanced on me angrily, but I remained calm. "This is thanks to money from my own parents." He continued, not convinced. "Your parents are dead. Were you lying about that? Calm down. This house was built with the real estate income left by my parents. I didn't use any of your parents' money. Brad seemed a bit calm after hearing my words. My parents had indeed died when I was young, but they owned a lot of real estate. After they passed, I inherited it, earning an annual real estate income of $3 million, amounting to several dozen million in total assets. I could have lived without working, but I had been seeking something that money couldn't buy: human warmth. I continued working not just for income, but for the comfort of sharing lunch with colleagues and supporting each other's mistakes. As an only child and an orphan, having money but cutting ties with society would only deepen my loneliness. When I was married and part of a family, I felt happy with the loving care of my in-laws. But after the divorce, I returned to work, valuing my bond with society. I explained this to Brad and added, revealing that I'm wealthy means that people would approach me for money. You liked me without knowing, which made me happy, although you just wanted someone to do the caregiving. Brad seemed calm after hearing my story, and his regret for driving me away was apparent. Though he tried to remain calm, his face was pale and his voice shook. But, it wasn't just that anyone would do. I thought that you would be kind enough to take good care of Dad. He nodded in agreement with his own reasoning. Still, I never knew you were this rich. You should have told me. Brad, what would it have changed if I had told you? Well, like managing. Brad was trying to get involved with my wealth, but it was too late. I smiled and said, if we had had a child, they would have been the heir. It's too bad. Brad's regret deepened on hearing this, but he seemed to have no response. I dealt him another blow. It's late today. Can we postpone our discussion to another day? We were supposed to talk about the caregiving expenses during our marriage, right? Yes, that's right. We need to settle that. Brad seemed conflicted with regret, but my words seemed to revive his hope. However, his hope was dashed again in the next moment. I'm relieved. Since I paid for your father's hospital expenses, it'll help if I could get reimbursed for that. What? Brad looked stunned and his face paled further. The hospital expenses I covered for 3 years amounted to $10,200. But let's make it an even $10,000, as I did it of my own volition. And then the diaper expenses I used from your father's savings, about $1,000, right? Subtracting that, you owe me $9,000. I couldn't help but laugh at Brad's speechlessness. My in-laws had said during the caregiving, we should pay for the hospital expenses ourselves since you're already doing so much. I never intended to let them spend their own money, but I also knew that if I paid for everything, my father-in-law would feel guilty. So the diaper expenses were paid from their savings. As he could use the toilet with assistance, the diaper expenses weren't substantial. It wasn't a huge amount, but Brad's pettiness had caused this situation. And about the damages you talked about. I don't know the specifics, but shouldn't I be seeking them since you cheated on me? Brad was utterly defeated by my words and collapsed on the ground, apologizing. I'm sorry, he said, prostrating himself. However, I found it meaningless. If you have something to say, we can talk the next time we meet, I said coldly, leaving Brad crawling on the ground and returning to my luxurious home. A few days later, I called my lawyer. I didn't think Brad would cling to me anymore, but I wanted to completely sever our ties. The lawyer was quick to respond to my request. When I visited Brad's house for the first time in a while, a young woman greeted me. Who are you? Is Brad here? I'm his ex-wife. She glanced at me and went back inside. Then Brad appeared. Oh, you're here. I couldn't reach you by phone, so I came directly like you did. As I conveyed this, Brad began to panic. I apologized, right? Your apology means nothing to me. Aren't you the one who contacted me about settling things? Let's not bother the neighbors and talk inside. Reluctantly, Brad invited me in. However, I was shocked by the state of the house I entered after a year. What is this? The hallway was dusty with clear footprints, and used cardboard boxes were placed in the narrow corridor. Peering cautiously into the living room, the young woman from before was lounging on the sofa, using her smartphone, surrounded by scattered laundry. Brad hurriedly closed the door, trying to hide things. Megan is here, so can we talk here? He said. It seemed that the young woman was his new wife, Megan. Brad led me to the entrance and suggested, let's talk here. I sighed and agreed. Given the state of the house, there was no other choice. But what's with the mess in this house? I couldn't help asking. Brad chuckled nervously. Just haven't cleaned up yet. But it was obvious that the house was being neglected. I had many thoughts but decided not to delve deeper to avoid getting involved in any trouble. My lawyer had neatly compiled the previous discussion into documents. The calculation included the $9,000 I was owed and an additional $20,000 in damages for being cheated on and kicked out, totaling $29,000. Brad begged for forgiveness with a pale face. I can't forgive you, I replied calmly. Just then, Megan peeked out from the living room. What's all this fuss about? This is your ex-wife here for something? She continued. I felt the situation turning troublesome, but I knew that Megan would eventually be involved in the damages discussion. My lawyer explained the situation to her. Initially silent, Megan then exclaimed, "What?" Surprisingly, she exploded in anger at Brad. You're 41 and utterly hopeless. Pay up for the trouble you caused. But, no bits. Megan's rationality surprised me. I'm truly sorry. If I had known he was married, I wouldn't have caused such trouble. She apologized deeply. The lawyer and I exchanged surprised looks. You didn't know that Brad was married? Of course. I was deceived. Megan revealed that she had been deceived by Brad, who had claimed that he was 35. Apparently, she first visited this house after I left and questioned the presence of female belongings, but was misled to believe that they belonged to his mother. However, she learned the truth a few months ago from a neighbor that she was indeed the second wife. Unable to forgive this deception, she sought a divorce, but Brad apparently refused, leading her to neglect the housework. It was my fault for being deceived. Megan glared at Brad with a stern expression while he just smirked. I felt sorry for the young woman and suggested to my lawyer, can we do something to help her? I'll pay whatever money she needs. What are you talking about? This has nothing to do with you. Brad hastily objected. It does matter. I lost 5 precious years of my life to you. Those years were incredibly important for me, a woman without children. She's still young. I don't want her to walk the same painful path as me. Megan looked at me with widened eyes, her harsh gaze possibly reflecting her despair in life. Understood, it's up to Megan. The lawyer said to her. Megan mustered her strength and declared, I want to divorce him. Brad was devastated by her words and crumbled to the floor. If Brad had genuinely loved her, he should have behaved more sincerely. He got carried away with his new life with her after driving me out. His selfish actions had created this situation. Oh, is someone here? At that moment, my mother-in-law appeared from the back of the house. Mother, Allison, I was shocked. In a year, she had lost a lot of weight and staggered towards me. Then she sat down at my feet. Brad has really done something terrible. I owe you so much gratitude, and yet, she said, crying with the same words as when I left the house last year. I was on the verge of tears but held back and asked her, how's your health? You seem to have lost a lot of weight. Yes, due to money problems. I haven't been able to eat properly lately. Why is that? I lost my bank book a month ago and I have almost no cash on hand. She replied. I glared at Brad, filled with anger. Brad, in a daze, couldn't hide his confusion under my gaze. It was clear that he was involved in this matter. What's the meaning of this? I raised my voice at Brad. He was startled and trembled. I realized that Brad had checked her bank book, found a low balance, misunderstood that I had used it, and sought damages from me. No more excuses. I said calmly. Brad's excuses wouldn't calm my anger. Mother, would you like to live with me? I proposed. Really? What are you talking about? Brad reacted, but I ignored him and continued speaking to her. Perhaps we should consider a legal adoption process. The lawyer immediately made this proposal. I was very receptive to it. My mother-in-law, with tears in her eyes, asked me again, are you sure? Of course I am, I answered with a smile. Hey, Mom, don't be fooled by her. You have a son, me. But Brad had no intention of letting go of his mother. She said, Brad, you're important to me as a son, but Allison was also a dear daughter to me. I still can't forgive you for driving her out. My mother-in-law spoke through tears and slowly stood up. I'll just go get my things. She then slowly disappeared back into the house, eventually leaving Brad at the entrance. The lawyer, my mother-in-law, Megan, and I left the house. Please be careful with your steps, Mother. I said this, taking her hand, while Brad remained silent. He probably never learned to consider others due to his self-centered behavior. Megan also left, and soon after, her divorce was finalized. According to my lawyer, Brad was ordered to pay Megan alimony. She offered to pay my lawyer's fees with that money, but I refused. As young as she was, she would need the money for herself in the future. I believed she would use it wisely for herself. Not only did Brad have to pay me damages, but he also had to pay Megan. The total amount was so high that Brad struggled to secure a loan for his part and agreed to pay mine in installments. I planned to use that money to support my mother-in-law. Brad would now live a lonely life, burdened with payments to other people. A man like him, who lived selfishly when he had the means, would probably benefit from working hard without much thought. Later, my mother-in-law and I discussed and proceeded with the legal adoption process. Given Brad's financial difficulties, it was unlikely that he would come to take her back. However, it was wise to be prepared for any emergency. My mother-in-law moved in with me and gradually started regaining her spirit. Her smile returned, and I felt truly good about my decision. She told me, I'm so glad I met you, Allison. This happiness, ironically thanks to Brad, gave me mixed feelings, but I wanted to repay my mother-in-law for what I couldn't do for my own parents. From this experience, I decided to dedicate a significant portion of my assets to support lonely children and desperate youth in similar situations. Helping others doesn't have to be grandiose. Through my life, I've learned that no matter the difficulty, a brighter future awaits. I continue to cherish my happiness and strongly wish to contribute to building others' smiles.